Well, good morning. It's Keith Hayes from Lewes in East Sussex, Mirador Television, and ready for another hour of chat and bits and bobs. So let's just introduce ourselves. Well, now, I think that the headline this morning is coming out of Burling Gap, where yesterday one of the lifeboats that comes out of, I think, probably New Haven, turned turtle. It capsized. And Burling Gap, of course, has been very much in the news recently for two or three reasons. First of all, it experiences heavy rockfalls. The clay chalk comes away and falls down. Probably that's why the gap was formed in the first place. But it can be a dangerous place. It's a beautiful place to go. It can be a dangerous place, and police have warned, don't walk close to the edge. And of course, the moment that some people get that sort of warning, the first thing they do is they go close to the edge and stand a very big chance of being dumped into the sea and buried by rock. And in fact, that has happened to a couple of people. So Burling Gap is always in the news in terms of a dangerous place. Well, there were some walkers yesterday who got into some difficulty. The lifeboat was called out. The seas obviously were pretty choppy, and the Coast Guard was scrambled with what is called the all-weather lifeboat, and in fact, it didn't come out of New Haven; it came out of Eastbourne. And they went to help rescue some people in the water who had been caught at Burling Gap. The Coast Guard helicopter was involved as well, so quite a bit of drama. And eventually everybody was safe, no loss of life, but it must have been pretty startling for those people who were on board. And they are volunteers, remember, and quite often you will see a little lifeboat in pubs and clubs, at least when they open again, and a variety of places, so that you can actually put a bob or two if you've got change from a drink or so on for the lifeboat to support society. And I think that that's very important that we do that. It makes our waters much safer, and particularly for us, because we're so close to some of these dangerous areas. So drama yesterday at Burling Gap with the Eastbourne lifeboat, life crew, volunteers, remember. The Coast Guard came in with a helicopter to take off a lady to hospital. And that's where the major story, I think, of the day was, because the other stories are, while important, are quite dull. And I suppose the most important one is that the Bank of England looking at their policies. And so far, of course, with quantitative easing and all the other things that they do, and don't ask me to explain that. I can, but it takes me hours. But they basically steer the economy through setting interest rates and so on. And what they've said is, look, government, you got us into the into the debt that's piling up and spending the money, is we expect a bit more from you in terms of how we handle all this. So I don't know there's going to be a squabble. Perhaps there will, perhaps there won't. Who knows what goes on behind closed doors? But the Bank of England and the government are obviously going to sit down and negotiate how things are handled. The other thing is, of course, is when will Ireland ever stop being a squabble for everybody? Yeah, as you know, that there is a border now between Northern Ireland and Ireland Republic through Brexit. There was a lot of negotiation. It all seemed to be going quite well, and everybody began to think that it could be a soft border. But because of the virus, it now has become a hard border, or at least people want it to be a hard border. And the Boris Johnson has been asked to suspend the Brexit terms between Northern Ireland and Ireland. In other words, just forget the border altogether. Just during the COVID crisis. And now, on the surface, it seems like a sensible thing to do. But of course, there are all sorts of political implications. And mostly the critics will say, you do that and that border will never come back again. And so therefore, Northern Ireland and Ireland will unite into one big island. Well, maybe that's the case. A lot of people argue that it would be better for the whole of Ireland, northern and southern, to come together anyway. And there is a lot more, should we say, cooperation between the two governments now than there was when I was there. In the between 1975 and 1990. I mean, that was a pretty desperate period in which there were a lot of lives lost and a lot of violence. But I hope that all this has been triggered by several things happening at once: Brexit, the economy, and COVID. Don't start to create violence and dismay between the two nations. I mean, the silly thing is it is a political issue. Is if you live in Northern Ireland, you find some of the nicest people that you could ever wish to meet, and then you go down to the south, and the further you get from the border, the nicer the Irish are, and some of them will tell you in the south is oh, there's something strange up north, and they're not quite sure what it is, and they're quite genial towards the people in the north. Does that mean that they should be united? I don't know, but politically, of course, what is expedient isn't always good in the long run. So it's an issue which has to be addressed. And because of COVID and Brexit and so on, there is a problem, and they're going to have to take a look at it. In the world, now it's interesting because I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's happening to ourselves in a moment or two. Myanmar, in other words, the old Burma, and forgive me for saying that because I think Myanmar doesn't mean much to many people. They blocked Facebook because there is resistance, civil resistance, growing to the military coup that took place last week or earlier this week. And they see that as fomenting unrest if you can actually get people to talk on Facebook and for that matter on all sorts of social media. And one of the things that, of course, happened in Egypt and the Middle East was that the people who wanted to topple the government marshaled all their forces by using iPhones and smartphones. And using social media to actually let people know where they were, where to meet, and so on and so forth. So governments have become particularly keen to make sure that that doesn't happen when they get into some sort of a spot of bother and one lot are trying to take over government from the other lot. And it appears that Myanmar have blocked Facebook for that very reason. I don't know why, but the very latest news is just fiddling around now. But in other national news, let's see. Well, we better go back to UK news if you want to see that. Um, Now we do have to talk about COVID, don't we? Which gives us an opportunity to stop listening to me for just 2 seconds. Right, COVID. We can't get away from it, nor should we, because we still need to be alert to this enemy within our ranks. And I'm going to tap that again. It's really beginning to upset me that that's zipping around. But the latest is that we have, in the UK, we have launched a trial so that some volunteers are alternating between the AstraZeneca vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine, because the various vaccines now, including the Oxford vaccine, are beginning to show really quite positive results about some things. One, I think it's the Oxford vaccine, not only will protect you much better from COVID, from those nasty little, I call them bugs, but of course the virus isn't a bug, but who am I to argue? But what it will do is it will also fight that um, disease, not disease, infection. It actually will try to sort of push it away and say, don't come back. So there's a great deal of excitement, and it is interesting to see how things begin to work, because if in fact the trials prove to be true, and now that they're experimenting with a mix and match, what it means is that our fight against the virus is we're getting the upper hand. And if we're getting the upper hand, what we're starting to see is a return to some sort of normalcy. In other words, lockdown could end, or at least could be starting to slide down the scale. So it's not as heavy on our society as it is at the moment. And if that's the case, then people can start to go back to work. And if they go back to work, then the economy starts to pump again. And if the economy starts to pump again, we start to get some money back into coffers, whether it's yours or mine, or whether it's the shops. It all starts to work in the right direction. And so the testing that's going on at the moment, we need to watch very carefully, because it could make all the difference to all of us. And all the things that we've found so dreadful from this latest lockdown may slowly be lifted, or perhaps lifted even faster than we thought. And that by Easter we could be back to normal. Now, don't take anything from that. I'm not making any predictions. I'm just trying to point out that what's happening on the COVID front can make such a difference to our lives in so many ways. And it starts to come streaming back, and the economy is at the heart of it, and particularly since the government has spent such huge amounts on keeping us afloat, keeping people afloat, and as a consequence, somebody has got to pay that money back, and we don't want to suddenly go back to the horrific days when I returned from Canada in the 1970s, where you got 80 or 90% tax. One of the things about tax, which economists will tell you straight, is that the more wealth that's created, the more tax you get. Not taxing just the little guy 80% or 90%. So all sorts of things happening because of COVID. And here we go again. We're leaders in the field. We're saying, here's an idea, let's try. Let's see. No, that's mostly the major news in the world and the country. Well, and just a reminder of what the main news is locally. It is that the lifeboat capsized yesterday out of Eastbourne, and the crew were pitched into the sea. But the lady, one of the walkers that was in trouble, was winched to safety by the Coast Guard helicopter and was whisked away to hospital. So nobody actually was killed or badly hurt, but it was a very exciting incident. And incidentally, I at first said, quite erroneously, that it was probably the New Haven lifeboat, because New Haven, believe it or not, had a lifeboat long before anyone else in the country, before there was a formal lifeboat system. And they had it some 20 years before a proper lifeboat association or a network was put into place across the country. And the reason for that was, I think it is, and I'm guessing at the name now, it's either Brazen, I think it's the HMS Brazen, which is remembered in the little church up on the hill. Went, I think it was about 1899 or 1900, went onto the rocks, and 105 people were on board, and 104 died. And the people of New Haven could hear the cries of those who were drowning. And they said this must never happen again. And they formed a lifeboat association. They got a lifeboat going, and it was one of the very first in the country. And just down the coast in Eastbourne, another first, because our Fuller, Mad Jack Fuller, one of the great creatives of East Sussex, lived in Bridlington. I think it's Bridlington. But along the coast anyway, towards Hastings and Battle, is a little village, and his tomb is there, and it's a pyramid. It's a folly, and Mad Jack was known for building follies, but he's also spent a lot of his fortune on donating various things, and he donated to the Eastbourne lifeboat, but he also donated towards the Eastbourne lighthouse. So a lot of the money came from Mad Jack. The controversial thing is, and actually he endeared himself to me because he got thrown out of the house. He's an MP. He's MP for Lewis. And he got thrown out of the House of Commons because he called the Speaker a pipsqueak. And this was in. I discovered this when the last government with Theresa May was there, and we had all the trouble with the Speaker. And I thought, well, any man who was brave enough to do that demands a certain amount of respect. But he was very controversial because he made his money from slavery. He had plantations which were left to him in the West Indies, and that's where all this money came from. But he did use it in many, many ways. And we would not be sitting here now because with television, if he hadn't have donated a considerable amount of money to a chap called Faraday to develop Faraday's cage. And Faraday's cage was experimental. He built a cage through which only certain elements of light and sound could pass. That's the best I can describe it. But it made television eventually possible. So Logie Baird looked at Faraday's cage and found it very pertinent to trying to transmit pictures. But if it wasn't for Mad Jack Fuller, well, perhaps we'd have television, but we wouldn't have it in the way that we got it today. The other thing is that you can still see them. There are lots of follies that he built, towers which are nowhere, and they just in the middle of a field or middle of a forest, and up you go, and there's apparently no reason for them. The reason was that Mad Jack wanted to know what was going on the continent whenever we were fighting the French. So he would climb to the top of his tower, and he would look, and he would ensure that bells were ready to be rung if we defeated Napoleon, for instance. So those are part of the reason he had follies. But he also had one built at his home and his house. And his servants, when he was up in London, his servants would sit up there with a telescope to watch for when he's coming back. So they had the life of Riley while he was away. And then when they saw him galloping down in the distance, they would they would alert everybody. By the time he got there, everything was spick and span. They all looked as if they'd been working all the time that he was away. And he actually also restored a couple of castles. I want to say Hever Castle, but I don't think that's right. I'll have to think about that. But there's a wonderful castle that you can visit, and it was restored by Mad Jack. So he was some pup. And one of the interesting things is that he died without ever being married. So the fortune went to various people. And his parents were married on Hamsey Island, the little village, which is sort of on a little triangular piece of was triangular in the middle of the Ouse, and that's where his parents were married. So there's a very big local contact. And I once, when I was in church, talked to some people who live in Opham. And I said, are you related to Mad Jack? And they very proudly said, oh, yes, my goodness me, we are. And suddenly leapt from one of the pews a gentleman who was visiting, and he had written a whole history of how Mad Jack and Hamsey and Opham fitted into the family trees. If you look up Mad Jack Fuller, it was very interesting. The reason that he built a tomb was so that he could be sitting at a table with cards and his favorite drink, which was sort of a port, if you like, after his death. And of course, there's a lot of speculation: is he sitting there at the table? But he was huge. He was 22 stone. When he died, he was a big, big man. And if you haven't followed Mad Jack, take a look. Just Google him and take a look. A fascinating character, a really fascinating character. Well, I waxed lyrical there. I didn't mean to, and I've taken us up to 6 minutes before, or 8 minutes before the top of the hour. So let's just take a look at those people who help us. And we've been showing how they help as much as we possibly can, because we do, and I'm going to go over this in a minute, we do rely upon the good nature and the use of services of Mirador Television and local people advertising on it or sponsoring it. And I'm happy to say that the figures show that there are about 15,000 people watching over a period of 10 days or so. And that this last week, the last month period, we picked up another 4,000. So we are gaining audience. And bit by bit, if you tell everybody about it, and as you can see at the bottom, we'd like to invite some of you on. So there's the email. If you want, please get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to see you on. And we do a lot with charities and people who are working hard to make our community a good one. But we do depend upon a certain amount of cash being loosened in various people's pockets. So let's see who has been kind enough to support us. And here are our heroes.
Roundabout has been going for 35 years. We're a dress agency, so what we do is we sell on behalf of people. The customer gets 50% of the price and we take 50%. The online shop is roundaboutlewis.com. I try and update it, daily when things come in. We're open Tuesday to Saturday, 9:30 till 4:30. So if you're looking for gifts or a dress for yourself, why not visit?
Now, you heard that they're the days that they're open and the times that they're open. And if in fact the news about the virus means that we're going to get there quicker, and these shops will be able to open, non-essential as they're called, then there's one that I would urge you to go and take a look at. And here's another where you can have a snack on the way.
Hi, I'm Elisa from Catching Tales, and we've been open here for about 2.5 years. We specialise in focaccia genovese, which is this focaccia, like that. And my mum and I went to Italy, to Genova, to learn to make focaccia, which is an ancient art. Then we do little salad pots, sauces, fresh pasta, stuff to take home and cook. We try to get locally to support other local businesses. We have a few cocktails in bottles, which is why we're called Catch It and Tales. We're open 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, to come by and see us anytime.
There you are. There you can have a little bit of a snackaroo while you're tearing around doing the shopping. And I understand that the real estate, if you call it that, for shops and so on, is a great deal of interest in the shops in Lewes, ready for when we're coming out of this dreadful period we've been through, where we've all had to stay very locked in tight. I say locked in tight because I'm no different to anybody else. I happen to live 200 yards, uninterrupted yards. I don't bump into anybody between my house and the studio. I can get in. My staff can't. So we've had great difficulty. But one of the things that I love is a little bit of nostalgia. And I remember the days when I was a boy. My daughter teases me about that, when I was a boy. But in my earlier days in this business, we had sit up and beg typewriters. And we hammered away on sheets of paper with 3 carbon copies to make sure that the story was available for our colleagues and for later in the day. And what does this gentleman have in his little stock of nostalgia?
My name's Yad and welcome to my shop, Bell & Co. We specialise in mid-century furniture, 50s, 60s and 70s mainly. One of our main ethoses here is very much encouraging people to look at older pieces of furniture rather than buying new or buying flat pack. We're very much environmentally based in trying to encourage people to reuse and reimagine objects, and so we spend a lot of time restoring pieces, reupholstering pieces and bring them back to life generally. They're just fantastic to look at, and they're just beautiful items at really, really affordable prices.
So that's where we get our cash from, some of it, and we've needed help through the lockdown period. It has not been easy, and we never closed. Like the Windmill Theatre in London, we never closed. And the windmill, which I always walk past the windmill because the building is still there. And I think that it's an advertising agency or something now. But it was where nude ladies paraded across the stage, and the forces, the army and navy men who were coming back on leave would go there and sit and take a longing look at a naked lady going across. So it became very famous, the windmill. No more naked ladies, and it's quite respectable now. But it boasted we never closed, and what it meant was right throughout the Blitz, right throughout the bombing, is it never shut its doors. It was always, its shows always went on. And fortunately, it never, as far as I'm aware, got a direct hit. Well, it couldn't have because it's still there. And it just kept going with the so-called spirit of London. So that's what we've done, and we've managed to keep going. And I hope that we can keep going. I think it might be interesting for you to take a look at, if I can find it. Perhaps I've taken it away. That's a pity because we did show our studio without people in it, and the sad thing is that it is very empty. I don't know whether that's it there. Let's have a look. And that must be reflective of many offices and buildings and plants in East Sussex, of course, around the country. Hubs which are normally alive and thriving, and seeing the interaction of friends and colleagues and the work and the guests, all of that has gone. Just as it's gone from our studio. And all I need to do is to look at that and remember what it is like, and remember that what we're fighting for is to get that back. Now, the one thing that does happen as a result of the fact that we're fighting absolutely everything, as it were, is that we can do crazy things. And I woke up at 2 o'clock this morning, and I suddenly decided I would do a night owl show. So off I went at 2 o'clock in the morning, lying in bed. And somewhere on Facebook, you may find it. There is a Mirador television night owl program where I actually chatted for about 20 minutes about nothing at all. But the reason that I chatted about nothing at all is some people joined me at that hour. They tapped in, and I was able to have a little conversation. That gave me a sense of satisfaction that we can broadcast wherever we like, wherever we like, and me lying in bed is not a pretty sight, I may say, not a pretty sight at all. But nonetheless, it gave several people a little bit of a chuckle. We were able to spend an hour, well, half an hour in the middle of the night before going back to sleep, just having a little program. So the other thing that I mentioned yesterday is that I had this wonderful session with people in New York and Florida, and I believe Colorado, and all over. Well, let's say the eastern part of the United States because of the time issue. But they were young people who had some sort of challenge one way or another, and they put together television programs, and they were feisty. They wanted to know what else they could do, and some do a cooking show, and so on and so forth. And we hope to show some of this stuff. But obviously, we have to be very careful because they're young people. So we have to get the permission of either them or their parents, and the people who are associated with them are busy getting that permission. I mean, we're going to show something yesterday, or actually, we were going to show it yesterday, but we put it off to today for technical reasons. But they suffered a death in the family of one of the participants. So we put it off again. But we'll be there because it was a scintillating, it was an exciting event for me. I had so much fun, and I want you to be able to share that with these young people. And I hope that we will be able to bring you some of their programs because, believe me, they are worthwhile. And the one that we were going to show was where they actually did a rap. Almost a story to a rap. It was fascinating, and you will see that eventually when we can do it with a certain amount of sympathy and empathy, and that it is the right time to do so. So we've got exciting things coming up, but also, what else are we doing? Because we are fighting issues on trying to keep a television station going, not only economically from a financial point of view, but also we are trying hard to beat the fact that they can't come into the studio. Our people can't come into the studio. So we're doing as much as we possibly can via the well, I say the internet, but by our streaming and all the things that we can do at a distance. But it's not the same. But nonetheless, here are a couple of our people who have fought bravely against all these disasters and against the obstacles, and are coming up with things that you can watch on miradortelevision.com.
Hi, I'm Jane at Mirador Television, and I love to recycle, upcycle, renovate, decorate, paint, and if I can find any old junk, I'm happy to turn it into something else. So in the next few months, I'm going to give you some ideas and show you what I'm up to at home, from turning tins into bins, making garden cushions, and my recent find was a Lloyd Loom ottoman, which has a wonky leg, but I'm going to try and renovate the leg and find some lovely fabrics. So lots going on. This week, I'm just going to show you a couple of old cot bumpers that I found hanging around the house from some time ago. And I thought, well, I don't want to waste the foam. I'll turn them into some seat cushions for the garden bench.
Well, there you are, and Jane is, you can see the humour in her face. She looks quite serious there, but she's a real comedian. And as she said, she and her family are always laughing, and they hope they always see the glass half full. and that's the way I try hard. I mean, if you talk about adversity, in the last 3 or 4 months, I had adversity coming out of my ears. But I still try hard to keep my spirits up and those of my colleagues, because otherwise it get too damn depressing, wouldn't it? But Jane is one of those uh, half glass full people, and she is working on a program at the moment which will show her humor and the fact that she can do very funny skits and so on. So we can look forward to that. And now an old favorite from about 6 months ago. He hasn't been on for a little while, but he's coming back as soon as we can actually get our act together, probably at the end of this month. He and Joey look after the potatoes and the tomatoes, or the tomatoes and the potato.
Good morning, peeps. We're back in Hailsham after 3 weeks. I've had a few issues going on with health and various other stuff, but back to full strength again now. Gardens are looking good. As you can see, the rain is here to help things grow. So our little perennial garden in Hailsham that we've been working on for the last few months is now really coming together. We've got enormous hollyhocks growing. The alliums are all out, cicerantiums. It's an absolute blast of life now, and we're still not in the main growing season. So another few weeks, it will really come to life. So as you can remember, we planted courgettes and peas and sugar snaps in the outside bed. So the courgettes are now flowering, and the sugar snaps and the peas are doing remarkably well.
Now, what Alex isn't telling you there is that he is the understudy for the show. The real star of that show is his dog, Joey. And it's Joey who steers us through the gardening thing, and Alex just provides the backup. And Joey is quite a character. He bounces around, and he's interested in absolutely everything that's going on. And he's a happy little dog. So Joey, along with Alex, will be back towards the end of the month. Now, I have been very critical about a lot of things, and I suppose we always will be, because we see ourselves as the watchdog of local politics, and somebody has got to take the distaff side, even when they do things well. And we've been up against it as far as finances are concerned, as indeed most businesses have throughout lockdown, because nobody is buying advertising or sponsorship or whatever. And hopefully we've turned the corner now, and that's going to change. But we did rely upon government, and we were one of the companies that fell through the cracks. No scheme that the government had for helping business did we fall into. And even when we got an invitation to put in an application, it came back saying, no, you're the wrong sort of business. We needed to be, I think, a pub or a cafe or a restaurant or something, and we're not. In fact, nobody knows exactly what we've come to do. I mean, you could say media, but then there are lots of things that we're not in media. You can say news, yes, we are, but lots of things we're not in news. You can say television, yes, you can, but somehow none of these seem to fit into any sort of help. And I'm really getting quite steep up. I must say that there is a small team. I'm still not a great fan of Lewes District Council or the merger, or for that matter, the cabinet system. I'm very critical of the whole thing. But there is a small team at Lewes District Council working with Eastbourne who have taken up the issue of those companies. There are about 3 million in the country. Those companies and individuals, self-employed people, who simply didn't have any support whatsoever from the schemes offered by the government. And they have been as creative as they possibly can. And whether we're actually going to get the support that we want, we're not 100% sure, but they are working very hard to see what they can do. And we're very grateful for that, because we need that help, at least for this month, before our revenue kicks back in. So that's one of the hardships that we've gone through, and hopefully we will come out smelling like roses, and we will get the help from the local council. Now, while I was looking at this, I came across some pretty startling facts and figures, because I have always championed press freedom and thought that the UK was striding ahead of any country in the world. Good old John Bull, and that we had no real censorship when it came to press. Well, you know where we stand in the league table of the world? 35th, and that worried me. And I started to look, and it would appear that the EU was having a go at investigative journalists when we were members of the EU, and we went along with it. And that our government has been having a mishmash when it comes to news and mention of issues on social media. So we don't have such a clean record. And some people are saying, they deliberately targeted companies such as ourselves to avoid giving any assistance to, because we are a thorn in the flesh. Well, I wondered whether that was true. So I've sent off a list of questions to our MP, Maria Caulfield. We give her a few days to look at them and so on and so forth, but we'll expect some answers back. And hopefully she will explain her position or the position of the government and any erroneous facts and figures that are wandering around, or it will leave more questions to be asked. And she is very welcome to come on and answer these if she wishes. But getting through to the lady isn't the easiest thing in the world. It does happen eventually, but the funny thing is, when Norman Baker was the MP, and for that matter, the one before him, the Conservative MP Tim Rathbone, they both had offices right in the centre of Lewes. It was quite easy to rap on the door and say, "Is Norman in? Is Tim in?" And normally they would peer out from the back of the office and say, "Oh, come on in." It's not like that anymore, unfortunately, and one understands why. Times change, morals change, every approach to everything changes. But we would hope that we would get some feedback, and it would be very nice if Maria decided to come on. And she has told me, that she does dip into Mirador Television from time to time. So it would be nice if she actually appears and gives us some answers to these things. Because I'm not a conspiracy theorist necessarily. I'm not saying that sometimes the conspiracies don't exist and that we should look at them. And that's where investigative journalists come in. But one of the things that we do need to do is to be aware if there are things that creep in without us realizing it. And if you like, what authority do I say that? Well, on behalf of our government and on behalf of the American government and on behalf of Brussels, as I ran from almost 2000 to 2013 or 2014, a whole number of projects trying to support independent media in the Balkans, the Baltics, Russia, CIS, the Gulf, and Africa. And I know how these things can work. One of the interesting things is in Africa, which is in a place called Damaturu, which you've never been to and nobody else has been to, but I have. An interesting place to go. And if anybody says, where would you want to go back to in Nigeria? I always say Damaturu because I had such a good time there. But we went to the press conference held by the local education commissioner. And the journalists are very nervous because they do get thrown into the jug quite often in some of these countries, and we never hear about it. So I said, no, hang on, you've got somebody here who can say he's from Reuters, and he will. And so they asked a couple of tentative questions, and then they'd fed me a couple of issues. So I asked the commissioner, how was it that a new program that supported meals for school children had 75 applications when a spot check of the school had only shown 35 pupils attending? And he thought for a moment, and he said, "Ah, yes," he said, "I remember that exactly. There were a lot of funerals that day." So it may not be that inherent and so on, but there is no question that it is almost a game between the media and authority. We have to try hard to ask the tough questions. It's not that we want to be mean or miserable or just unhappy people, but somebody's got to ask them, and that's our lot. And while I was in Kosovo, there was one lady, and did they need help in Kosovo? I mean, they really did. They've got some funny idea of what freedom of the press was about, and they were their own worst enemies, most of the journalists. But there was one young lady called Fatima, and she couldn't have been anymore, 22 or 23. But she was a very daring young lady, and she was a real investigative journalist. And they stopped letting her go into government press conferences. I mean, they did. They literally stopped her, and that was, of course, a direct assault on freedom of the press. But after I left, not too long after I left, she was investigating something, and she was shot. Not shot dead, I'm happy to say. She was wounded, but she was shot. And that still went on and could do, for that matter, in some other places, because we assume that everywhere goes at the same rate of knots in terms of what we call civilization as we do, and they don't. And quite often it is government people who are the last to want to change. Would you want to change if you've got a system that puts dollar bills in your pocket every day, pound notes in your pocket every day? No, I wouldn't either, probably. I'd be as corrupt as anybody else. No, I wouldn't. I'm too well known for being outspoken about these things. But nonetheless, it is a danger. And people will say, well, it's not taking place here. There's nothing like that here. How do we know? Unless we ask the questions, unless we get the answers. And the one thing that we do know in this country is that if an MP or a cabinet minister gives an answer, he has to stand by it. He can try to fudge it all he wants, but whatever he says, he has to stand by. So it'll be interesting to see what Maria has to say about our press freedoms being taken away from us bit by bit, death by stealth, or are we, as we always were led to believe, one of the leaders in open media, open press, freedom of the press? Interesting. 22 minutes. Oh, 22 minutes past. I think we better just give a little bit of a shot again to our supporters, because after all, they really are doing us a tremendous service by keeping us going. Well, those figures are false, because I just got in some stuff yesterday to say that another 4,000 people have been reached. So people are becoming aware of us. Where are they?
Roundabout has been going for 35 years. We're a dress agency, so what we do is we sell on behalf of people. The customer gets 50% of the price and we take 50%. The online shop is roundaboutlewis.com. I try and update it daily when things come in. We're open Tuesday to Saturday, 9:30 till 4:30. So if you're looking for gifts or a dress for yourself, why not visit?
Hi, I'm Elisa from Capturing Tales, and we've been open here for about 2.5 years. We specialise in focaccia genovese, which is this focaccia, like that. And my mum and I went to Italy, to Genova, to learn to make focaccia, which is an ancient art. Then we do little salad pots, sauces, fresh pasta, stuff to take home and cook. We try to get locally to support other local businesses. We have a few cocktails in bottles, which is why we're called Catch and Tales. We're open 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, to come by and see us anytime.
Well, I cocked that one up, didn't I? I mean, it was all over the place. But nonetheless, it's towards the end of the programme, so perhaps you'll forgive me. But we mustn't forget memorabilia.
My name's Yad and welcome to my shop, Bell & Co. We specialise in mid-century furniture, 50s, 60s and 70s mainly. One of our main ethoses here is very much encouraging people to look at older pieces of furniture rather than buying new or buying flat pack. We're very much environmentally based in trying to encourage people to reuse and reimagine objects, and so we spend a lot of time restoring pieces, reupholstering pieces and bring them back to life generally. They're just fantastic to look at and they're just beautiful items at really, really affordable prices.
Well, there we go. Those people are waiting for you, and with the signs that the economy is starting to pick up because COVID is working so well. We've only got 3 minutes left. So Lewis weather today, 7 degrees Fahrenheit is going to be the high. We're going to get some rain throughout the day. 9 is going to be the high, 7 the low. That's not too bad, I suppose. And tomorrow it will be 9 and 5. But Saturday, which is we knew it was going to deteriorate as the week went on. But Saturday, when the Six Nations rugby starts, the high will be 8 and the low will be 1. So let's hope it doesn't actually hit there. There will be some rain throughout these 3 days, today, tomorrow, and Saturday. Sunday is we might even get a smidgen of snow. We might, although it would be very rare for Lewis. Thank you for being with me this morning. The headlines really are with COVID. They're trying a mix and match between the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccine to see whether, in fact, it works much better if you get a shot of both. There's also news yesterday that the Oxford vaccine is actually fights the virus, not just protects you from it. So the markets are beginning to respond to that, because it could mean that the lockdown isn't going to be quite as fierce as it has been, and that we can start to ease back into some sort of normal life. Let's hope that all that is true. Locally, Burling Gap and the Eastbourne lifeboat capsized yesterday in rescuing some walkers who had got trapped at Burling Gap. Heavy rock falls, big rock falls at Burling Gap, so don't go down there if you don't have to. And there's no reason that you really have to, because it's a beauty spot and nothing more. So that's it. Let's see, it's 29 minutes past 29 minutes past 8. Thank you for being with me this morning, and I will see you tomorrow morning. And let's hope that the healthy Mirador, you're going to have to put up with some old programs, or at least not as much innovation for this next month while we get our act together again as we come towards the end of lockdown. But hopefully you will stay with us, that you'll enjoy the people that we have. Until tomorrow, toodle pip.